10 seconds is nothing. You can't plan in 10 seconds. You can't fix anything in 10 seconds. All you can do is realize what you've been ignoring. That's why countdowns are terrifying. They don't give you time to lie to yourself. When the numbers start dropping, all the excuses disappear. All the confidence evaporates. And what's left is the truth of who you are when something is about to reach you and there's no pause button. People always think danger announces itself loudly, like it wants attention. But real danger moves quietly, patiently, letting you feel safe until the last possible moment. By the time you notice it, the clock is already bleeding seconds. Your mind scrambles, searching for options that should have been chosen earlier, decisions that felt unnecessary when time seemed generous. Now every second feels heavier than the last. In moments like this, you don't rise to your potential, you fall to your habits. The instincts you trained, the warnings you ignored, the comfort you protected, they all show up at once. 10 seconds doesn't test your intelligence or your strength. It tests your awareness. It exposes whether you were paying attention long before the countdown started. Something dangerous approaching isn't always an external threat. Sometimes it's a consequence you delayed, a truth you avoided, a pattern you normalized because facing it felt uncomfortable. Danger doesn't sprint. It waits. It watches. And when it's close enough, it doesn't need speed anymore. The countdown isn't there to scare you. It's there to show you how much time you wasted pretending you had more. Right now, with 10 seconds left, the only question that matters is whether you recognize what's coming or if you're still standing there, convincing yourself it won't reach you. In time countdowns don't just measure time, they strip it. Every second that disappears takes an excuse with it. When the numbers start dropping, the stories you tell yourself don't survive very long. There's no room for optimism, no space for denial, no patience for comfort. A countdown doesn't care who you think you are. It only cares about what you've done before the clock started moving. That's why it's so effective at exposing illusions. It doesn't argue with them. It erases them. People love illusions because they're gentle. Illusions tell you there's more time, more chances, more flexibility. They whisper that consequences are negotiable and that urgency is exaggerated. A countdown doesn't whisper. It clicks. Each second is a small betrayal of comfort, a reminder that time was never on your side. It was just quiet for a while. And when silence breaks, illusion doesn't scream, it vanishes. The illusion of control is always the first to go. People think they're steering their lives, making calculated choices, managing risks, but put a ticking clock in front of them, and suddenly control looks fragile, theatrical, almost funny. You realize how much of your confidence depended on the absence of pressure. The countdown introduces pressure, and pressure reveals what was real and what was just well-rehearsed calm. Another illusion that collapses is preparation. Everyone thinks they're prepared enough, smart enough, ready enough, but a countdown doesn't ask how much you know. It asks what you've already decided. 10 seconds doesn't allow growth, reflection, or reinvention. It exposes whether preparation ever actually happened, or whether it was just something you planned to do later. Later disappears fast when the numbers fall. Then there's the illusion of importance. When time is abundant, everything feels equally valuable. Conversations, tasks, worries all compete for attention. But when seconds are running out, priorities rearrange themselves violently. What mattered 5 minutes ago suddenly feels irrelevant. What you ignored becomes central. A countdown doesn't help you choose what matters. It shows you what always mattered and what you were using to distract yourself. People also cling to the illusion that danger is obvious, that they'll see it coming clearly, recognize it immediately, and respond heroically. But the countdown reveals how wrong that belief is. If danger were obvious, there wouldn't be a countdown. The clock exists because you noticed late, because the warning signs were subtle, inconvenient, easy to dismiss. The illusion wasn't that danger wasn't there. The illusion was that you'd notice in time. A countdown forces honesty, because there's no benefit to lying anymore. You can't pretend you're calm when your heart is racing. You can't claim confidence when your mind is scrambling. You can't act indifferent when every second feels loud. Illusions require time to maintain. They need space. They need patience. A countdown suffocates them. Even identity becomes an illusion under pressure. People like to define themselves with labels: strong, rational, fearless, careful. But with seconds ticking away, labels mean nothing. Behavior replaces self-image. What you do in the final moments tells the truth far more accurately than anything you've said about yourself before. The countdown doesn't ask who you are, it watches. There's a particular cruelty in how cleanly illusions fall apart. No drama, no ceremony. Just the realization that the safety you felt was borrowed, that the confidence you had was conditional, that the certainty you trusted was never tested until now. The clock doesn't accuse you, it doesn't mock you. It just keeps moving, indifferent to whether you're ready to accept what it's showing you. People often think the most dangerous part of a countdown is what's approaching. It's not. The most dangerous part is what disappears while you're watching the numbers fall. Hope, denial, rationalization, all the little cushions that made life feel manageable. When they're gone, you're left exposed, standing in whatever truth you built your life on. And that's when you realize the countdown didn't create the danger, revealed it. It didn't remove your options. It showed you which ones you already wasted. Every second that drops is a receipt for a moment you ignored, a decision you delayed, a warning you laughed off because it felt distant. The illusion was thinking distance meant safety. When the last seconds approach, there's no philosophy left, no motivation speech left, no comforting narrative to lean on. Just awareness, raw and unfiltered, staring straight at whatever is coming and recognizing it not as sudden, not as unfair, but as something that's been moving toward you for a long time while you were busy believing you had more time to think about it. Danger rarely announces itself with noise. People expect alarms, chaos, something obvious enough to justify panic. That expectation is what makes danger so effective. It doesn't need volume. It doesn't need drama. It moves quietly, patiently, blending into the background while you're busy convincing yourself everything is normal. Loud threats give you time to react. Quiet ones give you comfort, and comfort is the perfect cover. Most people think silence means safety. If nothing is shaking, nothing must be wrong. If no one is shouting, nothing must be urgent. That belief keeps them calm while danger inches closer, unnoticed, unchallenged. The quiet is deliberate. It lets routines continue. It lets habits stay unexamined. It lets you sleep at night without questioning what's slowly changing around you. Danger advances in small shifts, a slightly delayed reaction. A habit that starts feeling off but familiar enough to ignore, a warning sign that doesn't hurt yet, so it doesn't feel real. People dismiss these moments because they don't match the picture of danger they carry in their heads. They expect chaos, not subtlety. They expect explosions, not erosion. The most effective threats don't rush. They wait. They let you adapt to their presence so gradually that by the time you notice something's wrong, you've already adjusted your standards. What once felt unacceptable now feels normal. What once would have scared you now feels manageable. That's how quiet danger works. It doesn't break in, it settles in. People also underestimate danger because it doesn't feel personal at first. It looks like something happening in the distance to someone else in another version of reality. You tell yourself you'll deal with it if it gets closer, not realizing the closeness is measured in awareness, not distance. By the time it feels personal, it's already within reach. There's a reason danger prefers quiet over noise. Noise triggers instincts. Quiet triggers rationalization. When something is loud, you react. When something is subtle, you explain it away. You give it reasons. You soften its meaning. You convince yourself it's temporary, accidental, harmless. Every explanation buys danger more time. Danger also benefits from predictability. As long as your days look the same, you assume the outcome will be the same. You confuse repetition with stability. But repetition can be a trap. Quiet danger hides inside patterns, using your expectations against you. It knows you'll wake up, go through the motions, trust the routine, and miss the shift happening just beneath the surface. People like to think they'd recognize danger if it were real. That's another illusion. Real danger doesn't look like danger until it's too late. It looks like inconvenience. It looks like discomfort. It looks like something you don't have time to deal with right now. The truly dangerous things are the ones you keep postponing because they don't feel urgent enough yet. When danger finally gets close, people often say it came out of nowhere. It didn't. It just approached in silence. Every quiet warning you ignored was part of its path. Every moment you chose comfort over attention cleared the way. Danger doesn't need to chase people who stand still pretending nothing is happening. There's also pride involved. Admitting danger is. Approaching means admitting you missed something. It means accepting that your judgment wasn't as sharp as you thought, that your control wasn't as strong as you believed. Silence makes denial easier. You can't deny an explosion, but you can deny a whisper for a very long time. Quiet danger thrives on delay. It knows you'll wait for certainty. It knows you want proof. It knows you'll ask for more time. And while you're waiting, it keeps moving, not fast, not loud, just close enough that when you finally react, the margin is gone. The scariest part isn't that danger approaches quietly. It's that people are trained to ignore quiet things. They're rewarded for staying calm, for not overreacting, for keeping things moving. They mistake vigilance for paranoia and attention for fear. So they stay relaxed while the threat settles right into their blind spot. By the time the countdown starts, the danger isn't new. It's familiar. It's been there long enough to feel normal. The silence breaks only because time ran out, not because danger changed its behavior. It was always moving, always patient, always counting on you to stay comfortable. Just a little longer when the clock is running out, intentions become useless. You don't get credit for what you meant to do, planned to do, or promised yourself you'd do someday. In the final moments, instinct takes over. And instinct doesn't care about your motivational quotes or your long-term goals. It acts on what you've practiced, not what you've imagined. That's why the last seconds are so honest. They strip away intention and expose behavior. People love intention because it's clean. It makes them feel good about themselves without demanding change. I meant well. I was going to. I planned to fix it. Intentions are comfortable because they live in the future, where nothing can challenge them yet. But when something dangerous is approaching and time is collapsing, intention has no authority. Instinct steps in, and instinct is built from repetition, not desire. Instinct is what you do when thinking is too slow. It's the shortcut your brain takes when there's no time to debate. And that shortcut is programmed by habit. The way you react under pressure is the way you've trained yourself to react when no one was watching. The things you ignored, the warnings you laughed off, the discomfort you avoided. All of that becomes your response when the countdown hits 0. That's why people are often shocked by their own behavior in critical moments. They say, I don't know why I froze, or I don't know why I did that. But the truth is, they do know, they just never wanted to look at it. The freeze, the panic, the misstep didn't come from nowhere. It came from a lifetime of avoiding discomfort, of choosing ease over awareness, of postponing action until urgency forced their hand. Instinct doesn't rise to meet danger. It reveals how you've lived. If you've practiced awareness, you notice sooner. If you've practiced denial, you hesitate. If you've practiced avoidance, you freeze. The last seconds don't create weakness or strength. They reveal it. That's what makes them terrifying. You don't get to negotiate with yourself anymore. You just act. And that action tells the truth. People assume that when danger arrives, they'll suddenly become brave, sharp, decisive, like courage is something that appears on demand. It doesn't. Courage is a habit, not a reaction. Awareness is a habit. Decisiveness is a habit. And habits don't form under pressure. They show up under pressure exactly as they are. Instinct also exposes priorities. When time is abundant, people scatter their attention everywhere. They say everything matters. But when seconds are left, only a few things remain visible. Everything else disappears. That narrowing reveals what your nervous system believes is worth saving, not what you say matters, not what you post about, what your body moves toward when there's no time to explain yourself. That's why danger doesn't test your intelligence. Intelligence needs time. Danger tests your conditioning. It tests what you've reinforced through repetition. It tests whether you trained yourself to notice early or react late, whether you taught yourself to face discomfort or escape it, whether you practiced responsibility or relied on hope. Instinct doesn't care about fairness. It doesn't care if you had a hard life or good intention. It doesn't care if you were busy or tired or overwhelmed. It just executes the program that's been running quietly in the background. And most people never check that program until it's too late. There's something cruelly efficient about that. You can spend years believing you're prepared, that you'd handle things differently if it really mattered. But when it really matters, you don't become someone new. You become more of who you already are, faster, louder, without filters. That's why the countdown feels like betrayal, not because danger is unfair, but because it exposes the gap between who you thought you were and how you actually live. The last seconds don't ask for explanations. They don't care about context. They just demand a response. And in that response, intention disappears completely. All that remains is instinct, raw and automatic, carrying the weight of every small choice you made when nothing seemed urgent, every warning you postponed, every moment you chose comfort over clarity, all condensed into a single movement, a single reaction, a single truth unfolding while the clock finishes. Its work, survival, has very little to do with strength and almost nothing to do with bravery. Those are the stories people tell after the fact to feel better about who made it and who didn't. Survival starts much earlier, in the quiet moments when nothing feels urgent yet. It starts with awareness, the uncomfortable kind that notices what others ignore, the kind that refuses to stay distracted when something feels off. Awareness isn't dramatic. It doesn't feel heroic. It feels annoying, intrusive, inconvenient, and that's exactly why most people avoid it. People assume awareness is passive, like noticing something and moving on. It's not. Awareness is engagement. It's choosing to see what you could easily look away from. It's recognizing patterns before they become emergencies. Most people don't fail because they're weak. They fail because they weren't paying attention when attention still mattered. By the time danger feels obvious, awareness has already lost its advantage. There's a difference between looking and seeing. People look all the time. They scroll, they observe, they consume information constantly. But seeing requires interpretation. It requires connecting dots, questioning comfort, and trusting instincts that don't come with proof. Awareness asks you to notice the silence before the noise, the shift before the collapse, the warning before the impact. And that makes people uncomfortable because it means responsibility. Awareness determines survival because it buys time. Not a lot of time, sometimes just seconds. But seconds are everything when something dangerous is approaching. Those seconds don't appear magically at the last moment. They're earned earlier when you chose to stay present instead of distracted, curious instead of dismissive, alert instead of comfortable. Awareness stretches time. Ignorance compresses it. Most people confuse calm with safety. If nothing feels chaotic, they assume nothing is wrong. Awareness breaks that illusion. It notices when calm is artificial, when stability is borrowed, when silence is actually avoidance. That's why awareness is often mistaken for anxiety. People say you're overthinking, being dramatic, seeing problems where there aren't any. What they really mean is you're noticing things they'd rather not. Survival isn't about reacting faster. It's about reacting sooner. And reacting sooner requires awareness long before action is necessary. The people who survive aren't the ones who panic well. They're the ones who noticed early. They adjusted quietly. They moved before anyone else realized movement was required. By the time others are shocked, they're already adapting. Awareness also strips away fantasy. It forces you to accept that not everything will announce itself clearly, that not all threats are loud, that not all danger looks dangerous at first. It teaches you to respect discomfort as information, not something to be numbed or ignored. That uneasy feeling you push aside because you don't want to deal with it is often awareness trying to get your attention. People die metaphorically and literally because they dismiss that feeling. They tell themselves they're imagining things. They wait for confirmation. They wait for permission. Awareness doesn't wait. It whispers first, then nudges, then shouts. If you ignore it long enough, it stops trying to warn you and lets consequences speak instead. Awareness also reveals limits. It shows you where you're vulnerable, where you're exposed, where you're relying on luck instead of preparation. That's another reason people avoid it. It challenges the image they have of themselves as capable, controlled, safe. Awareness doesn't care about self-image. It cares about reality. And reality is rarely flattering. When something dangerous is approaching, awareness doesn't guarantee escape. It guarantees options. And options are the difference between survival and collapse. Without awareness, you only have reaction. With awareness, you have choice. Even if the choice is small, even if it's imperfect. A bad option chosen early is often better than a perfect option discovered too late. Awareness is also lonely. When you see what others don't, you're often standing alone with that knowledge. People resist it, joke it away, accuse you of negativity. But survival has never been democratic. It doesn't require agreement. It requires perception. The crowd is usually calm right before it's wrong. The cruel truth is that awareness doesn't feel rewarding in the moment. You don't get applause for noticing danger early. You don't get credit for avoiding something that never happened. But when time runs out and something reaches the point of no return, awareness is the only thing that doesn't panic. It already knew. It already adjusted. It already accepted what others are just starting to realize. While the seconds disappear and reality closes in, delayed choices don't disappear, they wait. People like to believe that if they don't decide, nothing is decided. That's the most comforting lie there is. Not choosing feels harmless, neutral, safe. But time doesn't interpret hesitation as neutrality. It interprets it as permission. Every delayed choice quietly transforms into a force of its own, gaining weight, shape, and momentum while you're busy pretending it isn't there. Most threats don't arrive suddenly. They're built from procrastination, from the conversation you avoided because it felt awkward, from the habit you knew was unhealthy but manageable for now, from the warning sign you noticed and then immediately explained away. Each delay feels small, almost polite. Together, they form something sharp enough to hurt you when it finally demands attention. People delay because delay feels like control. It feels like keeping options open. I'll decide later sounds flexible, intelligent, mature. But later is not a place where choices stay fresh. They decay there. They harden. They turn into consequences that no longer ask for your input. By the time you're forced to face them, they don't feel like choices anymore. They feel like threats because that's what they've become. There's a strange comfort in believing you'll recognize the right moment to act. Like some internal alarm will go off, perfectly timed, giving you clarity and courage all at once. That alarm rarely exists. What exists is a slow buildup of pressure that you get used to carrying. The longer you wait, the heavier it becomes, until moving feels riskier than staying still. That's how delayed choices trap people. What makes delayed choices dangerous is that they disguise themselves as patience. People praise patience. They admire restraint. They encourage waiting until you're ready. But patience without awareness is just avoidance wearing good manners. Readiness doesn't magically appear. It's something you build by acting early, while the stakes are still manageable. Waiting for readiness often means waiting until the situation chooses for you. Every delayed choice narrows future options quietly, invisibly. You don't notice the doors closing because you weren't planning to use them yet. But when danger approaches and you finally look for an exit, you realize how many paths disappeared while you were waiting for the perfect moment. That's when delay reveals its true cost. People also delay because deciding means taking responsibility. As long as you haven't chosen, you can't be blamed. You can tell yourself the outcome wasn't really your fault. But consequences don't care about blame. They care about timing. They care about momentum. And momentum always favors what's been moving the longest, not what you suddenly want now. Delayed choices are especially dangerous because they feel reversible. You tell yourself you can always act later, fix it later, change direction later. But systems don't stay flexible forever. Relationships, habits, environments, even your own mindset solidify over time. What was once easy to adjust becomes rigid. What was once a simple decision becomes a dangerous disruption. When something dangerous is approaching, it's often powered by your own delays. Not because you intended harm, but because you underestimated time. You thought it was on your side. You thought you were borrowing it. Time doesn't lend. It charges interest. And delayed choices accrue that interest quietly, compounding until the bill arrives all at once. People often ask how things got so bad so quickly. They didn't. They got bad slowly, invisibly, while you were busy waiting. The speed you notice at the end is just the release of pressure that's been building for a long time. That's why it feels sudden. That's why it feels unfair. That's why it feels dangerous. Delayed choices also weaken instincts. The more you postpone action, the more you train yourself to ignore urgency. You become skilled at rationalizing discomfort, at soothing yourself instead of responding. Over time, that skill turns against you. When a real threat appears, your instinct is still to wait, to think, to hope it passes. Delay has become your default reaction. By the time the countdown starts, the threat isn't new. It's the final form of everything you postponed. Every layer has gathered into something solid, something approaching, something that doesn't care that you're finally paying attention now. The danger feels external, but it carries your fingerprints all over it, shaped by every moment you chose not to choose, every pause you mistook for safety, every decision you left unfinished long enough to turn around and start moving toward you. The last seconds don't lie. They don't flatter. They don't negotiate. When time collapses down to almost nothing, whatever truth you've been avoiding steps forward without asking permission. There's no space left for personality, reputation, or the version of yourself you present to the world. All of that burns off fast. What remains is raw, exposed reality, standing there with nowhere to hide. People spend their lives constructing stories about who they are: strong, smart, careful, different from everyone else. Those stories survive because they're rarely tested. Most days don't demand honesty. They allow delay, editing, excuses, but the final seconds don't allow edits. They demand a response, and that response reveals more than years of self-description ever could. In those moments, fear becomes very precise. It doesn't feel vague or philosophical. It points directly at what you ignored. The truth isn't abstract anymore. It's specific. It has a shape, a direction, a speed. And suddenly you understand that this moment didn't appear out of nowhere. It's been forming quietly while you were busy, convincing yourself nothing was wrong. The last seconds reveal patterns, how you react when control disappears, whether you freeze, rush, deny, or finally pay attention. These reactions aren't spontaneous. They're rehearsed.